Hey guys, Ginger here. Welcome to another episode of Fighting the Void. And we're going to do a little thought experiment here tonight on basically what happens if the United States does, in fact, go through some sort of national divorce. We actually have either a civil war or we just decide, you know what, it's not working out. We're just going to have to go our separate ways and figure it out from there. So if you've been watching the Periscope streams, you knew this was coming. If not, surprise. You also, quick couple housekeeping items. You see, I've got a new headset mic. I'm testing that out. I actually listened to some of the um, audio from one of the episodes. I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds wow, it's really rough. I was surprised. I thought the Yeti was doing a better job for me than that. Apparently not. So I went back to a Plantronics headset, which has served me well in the past. It's a good, low cost, easy to transport option for doing podcasting and that sort of thing. So also, work continues to be what it is, unfortunately. I've got at least two more weekends like this. And the third one where I probably won't do any sort of, well, may not do any sort of broadcast whatsoever, because that'll be the weekend in between getting done with the crazy hours and having to go out of town for some training. Yeah, the crazy hours are going to run right up to when I got to go out of town, which doesn't exactly throw me a whole lot. But good news for you, what I've decided I'm going to do unless that out of town training gets canceled, I'm going to try to schedule a whole bunch of interviews during that time when I'm in training. Give me something to do in the evenings, and keep me from going out and spending money, getting into trouble. You know how that is. So anyway, so if you've got any topics you would like to, you know, you'd like to see discussed or anything, let me know. Send either just go ahead and tweet at Fighting Void, send a DM, whatever, email at fightthevoid@gmail.com, and yeah, just let me know or drop something in the comments over here. Anyway, moving on to the actual topic at hand. So I'm not going to discuss how we might break up a whole lot. What the potential civil war might look like. I'm not going to discuss any of that. I'm just going, if insofar as it comes up, it'll come up in relation to how it affects things things would develop on the on the global political stage. So let's just jump into it. So let's say a couple of years go by and we have decided that it's just absolutely not going to work out. We carve up the country into 2, 3, 4 different blocks, and there is no more United States of America as we know it today. There's a few there's, like I said, probably up to 4, maybe 5 different countries carved out of the former United States, and we are no longer a global superpower. Each individual country would still have its own significant contribution to the global economy and to global politics as a whole, but I don't see any way that we would still be a superpower. So what does that mean? Well, as everybody knows, nature abhors the vacuum. So does politics. So does power. If there is a vacuum of power, something will fill it. Now, the most obvious candidate to fill that role is China. They've been working on building themselves up into a superpower for, frankly, decades. If people deny that, they simply haven't been paying attention. And this isn't weird conspiracy theory stuff. This is just what they've obviously been doing. This is what, in fact, to some degree or another, they've said they've been doing, which is, you know what? Every country is going to pursue its own interests. So, insofar as that as a matter of principle, you know what? I get it. No, no worries. It's got to conflict with us. And insofar as that goes, well, I hope you lose. But I get it. Suffice to say, though, it's not going to go well for anybody else who gets in China's way, because Chinese society does not put anywhere near the same basic value on human life as everybody else. Well, as Western society, I should say, and that's just because Western society is unusual in that regard. And that is because of its strong Judeo-Christian foundation. Insofar as Chinese society may have changed and moved closer to that, it's insofar as it's become more Christian. Insofar as Western society has moved away from that, it's insofar as it's become less Christian. And yes, we can discuss various examples that would seem to counter that. I'm talking about, I'm painting in broad strokes here, and I know that. Okay. If you want to discuss particular examples, that's fine, no problem. We can do that. But for right now, broad strokes. Okay. And that means China is going to just take stuff over. If they can take it over militarily in relatively short order, yeah, I think they would. So that means Southeast Asia basically becomes theirs. Whether either China expands its borders or they just expand its unquestioned influence. Because especially any place that has resources that would be of benefit to China, like parts of Russia, for example, that China already effectively owns, that would definitely be something that would happen. All those islands that they've been taking over / just flat out making in the South China Sea, they're going to be used as ways to further expand the defense of the mainland, and also has launching off points for invasions of other places that they think have land and resources that they want. Which, I don't know a whole lot about various natural resources in that region, but wherever they have them, China's going to be going for them. They will, of course, use their economic might where the military might cannot reach. And economically, they'll be easier to fight off to some degree for various places. Japan, despite having issues, will definitely present a bit of an economic obstacle for China, but they don't have much in the way of a military to fight them off. And I think if push comes to shove, China takes over Japan, probably using their friends in North Korea to help do so. Either using North Korea to flat out take it over, or to divert resources elsewhere, which North Korea would essentially serve as a distraction for whatever United States military may be left. Not to mention Russia. But then again, Russia may end up initially working with China. We'll discuss that possibility as well. But I think Japan falls one way or another. Not that they have a ton of resources, but they're an economic threat, and also there's just a lot of R&D. There's a lot of facilities there that I think China would probably find useful. Other places where there is land and resources to be had, of course, again, you've got southeastern Russia. That would be huge. There's, of course, Mongolia, that apparently China's already been making inroads on anyway. So again, China's already kind of expanding. They're just kind of doing it under the radar. And I think if without us being there as any sort of check, they would just do this. They would just expand dramatically. In terms of heading in other directions, India. India is a potential. It would be a good speed bump for China. One, they have about as many people as China, just a freakishly huge number of people there, and also not the most hospitable of terrain. So China would have a hard time moving. And yes, they would have to get around here a little bit and navigate around countries in between, which I'm forgetting some of my geography. So I'm going to bring up a map here and check and just refresh my memory on a few things here. Yeah, okay, so there's not a whole lot in between there whatsoever. They would have it pretty, they're logistically speaking, getting over, through Nepal, through the Himalayas. That would be a bit of a pain, but they could definitely do it, especially without us to check them. They would have a fair amount of ability to just go ahead and just airlift everything right over the Himalayas. And that wouldn't be the best thing possible for us, or at least whatever's left of us, I should say. India does have a fairly large military. They have nukes. I don't think they would have the qualms that we would have about using them. I think to defend themselves, I think they would almost certainly use some, drop a few nukes at least if they thought it would help them win. I'm going to go ahead and bring up that map just so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. It's going to take me just a second to get it on up, and there we go. Okay, so you can see right here, you got India, you got China, there's Nepal right there. See, the Himalayas go right all across there. You got Myanmar here, you got more mountains, and it's jungle, highly, highly inhospitable. Not easy to move large forces over, but I don't think they wouldn't try. There's also, they could come down here through Pakistan. Again, not terribly hospitable, but probably avoiding some jungle there. As far as Russia, you got Russia up here, Mongolia, and over here. I mean, Russia's just full of natural resources. Russia's a natural target for China if China doesn't have anything else to worry about. And without United States, yeah, they really don't. As far as militarily, would they be able to? It's a fair question. Russia is nothing like what it used to be in terms of its military might. However, China isn't quite as big as a lot of people, I think, would have you believe either. Now, if China, again, had some North Korean support, North Korea's got a very large military. I don't know how well trained they are, but they are big. And, they could definitely get some additional support from there. But also, I think North Korea would be busy subjugating South Korea, and possibly they would be the ones who would take care of Japan as well. So you've got this whole region over here that would essentially be controlled by China. You've got India that would definitely be a speed bump, but I think China at least makes them ineffective. Russia is what they would really want, though, or at least a good chunk of it. Maybe not the whole thing, definitely not right away, because that's just a crazy amount of territory to try to control. And as anyone who knows the slightest thing about history knows, Russia really doesn't like to be invaded, like at all. So it could be difficult, especially if they try to bite off more than they could chew, as often happens in war. Now, further south in Australia, which you don't see on this map, but it's down here for those who don't know, or it's down below Indonesia for those who are unfamiliar. And there's some natural resources there. There's obviously a massive amount of land, but it's not terribly habitable. So needless to say, that's not a huge draw, except as parts of it could be useful launching off points for other military operations. And also denying, again, whatever would be left of the US, denying us access to launching off points. It'd be more of a strategic thing as opposed to an economic takeover. Now, economically, of course, there's the Middle East that they would want. But I suspect they would do that primarily diplomatically. I don't think they would make a military grab for the Middle East, certainly not right off the bat. But they would definitely expand their economic influence over that region and eventually use it to squeeze Europe. And again, whatever's left of us. There's no way that they would not try to do that. And the effect would be rising oil prices for everybody, which means rising prices for just about everything you can imagine on the planet. Same with Northern Africa, where there's a lot of oil resources as well. They would definitely expand their diplomatic and economic influence in those areas, and again, further squeeze out Europe and the United States. All right, again, leftover. I'll just say United States. Obviously, we mean leftovers. Now, all of that assumes that things are going more or less according to China's plan. Thing is there anyone that could throw a significant roadblock, not just a speed bump? I believe if the U.S. remnants and Europe could actually get together well enough and could get along well enough in order to mount a NATO response to China aggression, then yeah, I definitely think that would be a good solid speed bump at the very least. A very good. I think it would be a good roadblock, and we could probably check them. But unless Russia was to specifically call for our aid and we trusted them, I don't think we'd be able to stop China from getting a hold of a decent sized chunk of Russia. I think a good chunk of Russia and probably Japan would fall before we could really do a whole lot about it. Same with the rest of Southeast Asia. And again, we would have a hard time countering their economic influence in the Middle East and North Africa. But who knows exactly how that would all play out? Because then we could start playing our own economic games with food, especially. Yeah, because China, India, all of that. A lot of people, and they need food. And yes, China's huge, but not all of it is great for growing things. Same with if they took over those areas of Russia or Mongolia. Not all of it is great for growing things. So I think there's a possibility we could hedge their oil diplomacy with food diplomacy. But again, would we get along well enough for that? And that does depend a lot on exactly the nature of the breakup of the United States. Let's face it, it would go along political ideological lines, and that means you would have at least one significant section of the former U.S. that would be very socialist and would likely be very friendly towards China. So they probably wouldn't join us in trying to stop them. They might even help them try to take on the rest of us. So yeah, that's not necessarily the best. And of course, now would those areas of the country that would form that section be big militarily? Yeah, actually they would. Now, how many people would stay there and how that all shakes out, I don't know. But let's just assume for sake of argument that California would retain all of its military bases, same with like Seattle and Washington, that they keep their naval bases and all the equipment there, that they've got some, there's a lot of Navy there. So you've got aircraft carriers, you've got submarines, all of that. Yeah, I think they would hold on to that. And that actually would make them a significant military force in their own right. Coupled with the fact that they do have a good chunk that they're pretty big economically, even though there's a whole lot of different things there to discuss. To say in terms of gross numbers, California's got a pretty substantial economy. So yeah, they would be a significant help, I think, to China. At the very least, they wouldn't really get in China's way. You couldn't count on their help, which means you're back to the East Coast, which again, the East Coast again has a lot of the naval power of the current United States, but the only place that does and wouldn't and wouldn't probably go full on lefty is basically south of the Mason-Dixon and along the Gulf Coast. And in terms of where aircraft carriers are, basically Virginia. And Virginia politically right now is obviously blue. in terms of in a national divorce situation, who knows which way they would actually go. It's hard to say. The people, uh, the people that don't live around DC may well decide it's like, no, we'd like to go ahead and not be socialist. Thank you very much. So, Virginia could be one of those states that would easily break up itself. The northern part of Virginia around DC goes with the People's Republic of New England, and I don't know, the rest of it goes with the new Confederacy or whatever would rise up out of that. Who knows? Yeah, so I think that's the big thing. I think China would essentially expand its military influence, would expand its economic influence, and eventually marginalize us. I think we would be no more important than Europe is currently, which is to say important but not huge. A speed bump, not a roadblock, not by ourselves at any rate. I think they essentially wind up controlling the Middle East and North Africa. Excuse me. Oh, you'd think I'd be used to being up right now. Now, is there anyone else that could stop them? I don't know. Is there anyone else that would make a play at being a superpower? Russia might, if they're feeling sufficiently arrogant. I just don't think they've got the juice to pull it off. They might make a play for more of Eastern Europe and try to defend themselves from what would be almost certain Chinese aggression. Heck, who knows? Maybe they would actually be able to revive the USSR, or at least the Soviet Empire, by calling on the former republics to unite against the Chinese threat. I think actually that's a possibility. You could actually get a resurgence of the Soviet Union as a result, although it wouldn't look exactly the same. I wouldn't be happy to see it. Now, the reason that I say that they would oppose China is because historically, even though they were both socialist/communist countries, Russia and China didn't really get along historically. They just didn't like each other for whatever reason. I don't know. They've been getting along more recently, as essentially they're both opposing the United States. But if China were to invade, that would obviously change things a little bit, and Russia would have to do something. So, and if they got all of their former republics back together, that could help bolster their strength somewhat, but I don't know how much. I mean, in all honesty, I think it's a crapshoot. I think they would be a decent roadblock if they got reunited, but would they be able to make a real play? I don't know. Now, if I were China and I were smart, I would not invade Russia right away. I would wait for them to decide, wait for Russia, or even encourage Russia to get involved in a war in Eastern Europe, and for them to try to take back over the territory that they used to control before launching my own invasion. That's what I would do. Wait for Russia to make a play to be a superpower again before I launch my own play, at least on Russian soil. In fact, at first, I would engage militarily elsewhere, but I would not move in any direction close to Russian soil at first. I'd wait for them to get distracted themselves elsewhere and then go to town. Would Europe be able to reunite? I don't know. I don't really see them being able to do anything. We've essentially been their military for far too long. They would have a very, very hard time making their own play at being a united superpower again. Iran, they would take advantage of the power vacuum to try to expand their influence in the Middle East. They may even find themselves actually working with China for a while. I could see that. Now, eventually, Iran would wind up trying to double cross China, or China would double cross Iran, one or the other. But how that again, unless Iran was able to draw on a significant portion of the Muslim world, they would not be a significant obstacle to China in the long run. And I don't think Iran could do that because of the whole Sunni Shiite divide. Iran is kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the Muslim world that nobody really wants to invite over for dinner. Basically, they're opposed to the rest of the Muslim world, despite having a lot of influence through proxy groups of late. But I think in the end, I don't think they'd be able to really marshal the support needed to be more than an annoying thorn in the side for China. So I don't know. Maybe Iran winds up just working with them for a while until they feel confident they can double cross them. How long that would take, I don't know. Africa, of course, is unfortunately a non-entity in this. They would essentially be continue to be fought over by the other significant powers. You know, would the United States wind up getting taken over by by either China or Russia? That's a good question. That would depend on how much support the People's Republic of New England and the West Coast would try to actively help them. I don't know. It's a good question, and there's not a good answer to it. But anyway, that's just a little thought through a rundown of some things that might happen if there is a national divorce. Again, I hope there isn't, but it does seem increasingly likely, increasingly inevitable that the United States, we've had a good run, but almost certainly within my lifetime, barring some massive change to things, the United States is not going to exist in its current form. You know, like I said, be certainly not beyond my lifetime. I'll be surprised if we continue to exist in our current form for as much as another 20 years. So yeah, I'm not saying that we're going to collapse next week or 2 weeks after the election necessarily. There's a lot of variables that play there. Now, I think it could happen that way. Yeah, I do. I do think that after the election, we could have a final, irrevocable, undeniable break. But it's also quite likely that we just keep limping along, continue to slide into oblivion over the next 10 to 20 years. You know, before it's just, yep, we really are split now, or we are taken over by someone else. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the little thought experiment. I hope the new mic works out better. I noticed it. I'm trying to modulate my speech a little bit so it pops a little bit less into the mic. I'm going to work on that. And of course, if it doesn't work out, I'll have to try a different mic, and I'll just save this for when I'm traveling. But anyway, for now, that is about all I've got. I will be back certainly next early Monday morning / Sunday night. And until then, keep fighting.